All right, guys, welcome to episode number 20. We've made it to 20 of the KFO Show, Kayak Fishing Obsessed. If you love kayak fishing or fishing in general, guys, I have Andrew Hayes from the Tackle Talk podcast. I've already been hearing from a lot of you guys saying it's one of your favorite podcasts. So tonight is going to be awesome. So I am absolutely pumped. As you notice, I'm not in my studio tonight. I am in Tennessee. Last week I was in Wisconsin. Then I drove 1,300 miles down here. And so kind of on vacation with spring break with my family. If you are a man or woman of faith, please pray for them because they are currently sick right now in the other room. So my wife is a champ. She's taking care of my littles, but man, it's tough. All right, well, let's hop into the show here. First, want to give some credit where credit's due. I want to thank you to the sponsor of the show, usrivermaps.com. If you're new to the show, if you're not, I've been talking about this company since we started. Jeff, who is also a listener, sometimes in the comments, if you have a question about any of his art that he does, he made some sick hydrological maps. So head over to usrivermaps.com. And if you find something you like, here's a little gift for you. Get $35 off. If you're on the podcast, all lowercase, GET, the $, the number 35 off, OFF. And you can help yourself one of those. I have one. A lot of the individuals who I've had on the show have them, and they rock. I also want to give some shout outs to some new channel members, Jacob Tomlin and Lost in Tackle. Guys joined up this past week. If you want to know more about that, I'm not going to dive in right now, but you can kind of go down to the join or go over to my page. It's where I go the extra mile for you, kind of do some early access to some content. It's really my inner circle of individuals kind of reach out to help me kind of guide the direction of the channel. So thank you, Jacob. Lost in Tackle. I believe that's Ben. All right. Well, enough of all of that. I want to welcome the man, the myth, the legend with over 1 million downloads, guys. 1 million. A million downloads. Andrew, welcome to the show, man.
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for you're Ohio, right?
Yeah.
You're a Buckeye.
Yep.
I knew it. I'm not sure why I didn't have you on earlier. You're over in Dayton, is that correct?
Yeah, just outside of Dayton. Where are you from?
Canton, the Caribbean of the Midwest.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like, especially, you get the same thing, right? When you tell people where they're from, it's like we're not in anybody's like destination of places to go fishing in general, or bass fishing, or probably even visit in general. Really, you have at least a couple tourist things up there. Like we have absolutely nothing over here. Like it's just a barren wasteland.
We got the rock and roll, right? I got the pro football, which is I've passed 10,000 times in my lifetime, never been once. And now I refuse to go. Yes. Yeah. With a bunch of busts.
Yeah.
Everyone's always coming through. Like, hey, if you ever come to Canton, it's like, I know when I offer that out, no one's ever taken me up on it. So I offered it out to everybody. And because in like 15 years, no one's like, hey man, I'm coming to Canton.
Yeah. Funny enough, me and the family, we're gonna take a cross-country road trip to Canton. Yeah.
Oh crap. I'm gonna host people. I haven't hosted people in a decade.
It's the same thing here. I always like end with people, like after we'll get done recording or whatever, I'll say, I pray for your sanity you don't find yourself up here, but if you ever do find yourself in Dayton, Ohio, give me a shout and we can go like get on some strikingly average smallmouth or something, but don't make it a destination to come here.
I will give you personal best 3-pound bass, guaranteed.
Yeah, maybe.
Nail it. Possibly.
It's a good day. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's what like the fishing we do around here too. Like we'll stumble into some good fish every now and then, but I mean, like your smallmouth are topping out at 19, maybe 20 inches if you find like a real brute. And we're fishing a lot of like small creeks and small rivers and little lakes and stuff. We don't have any like of these places where you see people up on Erie or somewhere landing 6-7 pound smallmouth. You're like, that doesn't happen down here.
The record was just caught, wasn't it? Like in the past 6 months?
There was one on Erie I think it was the Canadian side, maybe, but he caught like a 10-pound smallmouth. Yeah.
It was
Gallagher was his last name. I can't remember his first name. Mike Gallagher. But yeah, it was a 10-pound smallie. It's crazy.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah. I've never seen honestly, I'm trying to think. I've never seen a largemouth over 7 pounds in real life in my life. Like I've never seen a largie over 7, because I don't travel anywhere. Like I just fish Central Ohio, like public water. So I think the biggest largemouth I've ever seen is probably 6'12", and the biggest smallmouth I've ever seen in person was probably just over 5.
That's me too.
Yeah, so
I
I can't fathom a 10-pound smallmouth. My brain can't comprehend what a 10-pound smallmouth looks like because it just is twice what I've seen.
My rods are breaking in half when they think about it right now.
Yeah.
I get a hold of a 4. I'm like, "Oh, I am
Bad.
stretching the limits of my tackle right now." My
Yeah.
Xfinity rod from Walmart is cracking as we speak.
They work, man.
Hey, they do. They work. Well, tell me a little about your story. I I had a lot of people were like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're having me on tonight. It's one of my favorites." Tell me, I know a little bit of story because I've been on your website, right? And all I know is like you started it in 2019. You saw something, like you didn't see what you were looking for when it comes to bass fishing podcasts. So you're like,
Yep.
I'm just gonna do it. But I really want you to tell the story of that because you've created something from nothing in a relatively short amount of time. It's pretty impressive.
I appreciate it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's interesting because we're kind of in like a little niche that I think we were just one of the first ones to really do it. Like it was everybody was pushing to YouTube at that point. So I guess if we back up, this is probably 20, I don't know, 18, 19, maybe somewhere around there. Where I work in sales. And so I spent a lot of time in the truck, a lot of times, traveling to and from places and a lot of pavement hours. And I used to listen to a bunch of like sports shows. I used to listen to, you can only listen to the same George Strait cassette tape, so many times. You're like, all right, I got to find something else to listen to. And so I listened to a bunch of sports shows. And then at some point it just kind of clicked. I was like, why don't I search for bass fishing shows? Like everything's in the palm of your hand now. I can
right.
listen to fishing shows. It's what I'm obsessed with. And there just wasn't anything out there. At that time, you had Ike Live, which was like very sporadic and it's more of just, buddies kind of like shooting the bull, drinking beer and hanging out, and then a little bit of fishing talk. But mostly it's just kind of like camaraderie type things. Or there was Bass Talk Live, which Bass Talk Live is very tournament centered,
Right.
very much like of the pro side of things. And I was like, where's the stuff for just regular dude? Like I'm a weekend warrior. I
Yep.
want to like I'm a nerd. So when I tune into something, I want to learn something, like to know that I left with more knowledge than I came in with.
Mhm.
I just don't like wasting my time with things. Like I would be a terrible if I was a reader, which I'm not a reader. I wish I was, but I would never read like fiction books or novels or something. It's like I want at the end of that book to have learned something and to take something, into my daily life. And so otherwise I just feel like I'm wasting time. And so it was the same thing with these fishing shows. I was like, where's the semi educational stuff where I can just kind of like, listen as I'm driving and learn a little bit, and no one was doing it. And so after like waiting for, a couple months, I was like, someone's going to do this eventually. Podcasts are taking off and no one was doing it. And finally I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to try this. And so
Yeah.
I'm a big music nerd. So I have like, guitars and basses and mandolins and stuff all over the place in here. So I have like the audio background sort of to set everything up and record and do all that kind of stuff. And so I just set it up. I recorded like 3 or 4 shows at the beginning and I put them out there. And it's like anything else. It's like when you probably started YouTube where no one's listening to it. Like you put all this work into it and then you look and you had 4 downloads. And you're
I
like,
still
man,
wonder that sometimes, to be honest with
yeah,
you.
well, I mean, we all do, right? You're no matter where you get, you're like, man, I feel like for the work I'm putting in, there's not that much coming out of it, right? But eventually, what happens is you stick with it, you grow, you grow organically, or just a lot more grassroots style, where you don't have like anything viral that goes crazy. It's just you build this following of people that really enjoy what you're doing, and you get better at it as you go. So if you listen to my first episodes and you listen to now, they're drastically different. I feel like I've gotten a little bit more polished and a little bit better, on the mic as I go in, and I'm more prepared now and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I just started it, and it probably took about 6, 8 months before you really saw downloads kind of start to take off a little bit. And you're like, okay, this is starting to become a real thing. And now it's just, I look at the download numbers and it still blows my mind. We're at like almost, so we do 4 episodes a month right now because we basically do one a
Okay.
week, and it's about like 100,000 people that listen to this thing, which is just like bonkers. I grew up in a town of like 6,000 people. Like I'm, again, talk about brain can't comprehend things. I'm just some random dude in a bedroom that rambles about fish. So that's kind of like the 30,000-foot view of how it started. It was just no one was doing it, and I think we just hit it at the right time. And I wanted this like mix of tips, of gear reviews. That was the other thing. The whole industry is so disingenuous with gear reviews, where they're just promoting the person that's giving them a 10% discount code. And
Yeah.
so you got to use this brand of tungsten. You got to use this rod. You got to use this reel because I get 5% off, on a coupon code that they give out to everybody. It's like, I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to, we've said from day one, I won't work with rod companies. I won't work with reel companies. I won't work with bait companies because I want this to be genuine. And I want to be able to say, if I think something sucks, that it sucks. And if something's good, then I want to be able to say it's good. And so that's kind of like
Right.
the gist of the show.
So was there a time in the midst of like the growth, right? I'm episode 20 and it's not even really in a
Yeah.
podcast. I just take the live show and make it a podcast. There's
Which
not
is
like a
smart.
lot of
Yeah. You've already done all the hard work. You might as well put
hard
it
work.
on there.
Yeah. So I'm throwing it on there. Was there a moment like for those of you who are like, you know what? I've been wanting to do a podcast or something or start my YouTube channel or whatever it was. Was there a moment where like it just accelerated like Mach speed for you?
Honestly, no. Like, I've looked back at the, like, the little
Oh,
trajectory
Ariel?
of
Yeah.
downloads and stuff and the analytics and stuff, and there really wasn't. It is just this staggeringly consistent, like, this. And as you go over time, right, that what looked like a big peak at the time now flattens out because your numbers, get bigger and smaller, obviously, as you go
Right.
in a wider set of data. But, yeah, I mean, it's just this kind of, like, that sort of thing. And it's really cool because I've said this before too. I could have, Kevin Van Dam on next week, and I could have my best friend on the week after, and the downloads are going to be almost identical because,
Same.
yeah, like nobody's coming in and being like, "Oh, I saw this on the internet. I got to go listen to this for the first time." It's like it's just the small growth of the just like a channel and like anything else where it's also a podcast. You can't have something go viral, which is an interesting aspect of
Right.
podcast. There's no algorithm. There's no way for, Apple Podcast to shove an episode down your throat or to auto play to the next thing. It's like you had to say, nope, I want to go and I want to search out your show and I want to go download it and I want to listen to it. And it's just a different beast, which is, I think, kind of interesting.
It's an anticipated or expected grind return versus YouTube's the same thing, but I feel like it's mentally unhealthy for a lot of people to go viral.
Yeah, it's
And
also a
then like
little bit of just like a gamble where like you could hit the lottery and the algorithm could love your next video or it could get recommended or something and starts trending and then you can't do that with some other things which in YouTube you can. So you've seen people that have had like two videos set their channel up for success for years after that because those two channels just went crazy viral where, some other formats don't really have that option, I guess.
true. So all you do is podcast? I mean, I saw you have like you do some live show stuff on YouTube, but
Yeah,
that's
so
not where
I'll
you
do
spend your
live shows
time.
like this, but I never do my own. I was just I like hopping on and talking with people, but yeah, I'm one of those guys. I want to do something and do it well, and so probably to a little bit of my detriment, I don't branch out and do really a whole lot of other stuff. I just want to like do one thing and do it the best of my ability and not kind of spread myself too thin, and then my show starts to suck, my YouTube starts to suck, my website starts to suck. Like I just want to do one thing and do it well, and I know that I'm terrible at video editing. I I don't like doing that side of things, and so I just like the audio format. And so every once in a while, we'll have like an interview where I'll take the Zoom feed and I'll throw it up on YouTube because I want to archive it. But other than that, we're pretty much just podcast.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice. Well, everyone, I'm trying to dial in the kind of live show, and what I'm
yeah.
trying to do is this is for all the listeners out there. One, this is an interactive live show. If you got questions for myself or for Andrew, just like put a couple question marks before it, because sometimes the chat over here on the side kind of goes crazy, and there's conversations that have nothing to do with what we're talking about. Just so I can identify it, because I start it, and whenever we get a break, I kind of go in there and answer those for you. So if you have one of those, I already see them coming in. I'm already starting these. Go ahead and throw that in there. But what I asked Andrew to do, because I was noticing as I was doing a little research on him, that he was at I believe, the Columbus Expo,
Yep.
not too long ago. And as I kept on scrolling down, like you did a seminar, straight up seminar on the importance of rod selection. So a few days ago, I was like, hey, I know you already have all these talking points down. Would you be willing to like do like the straight up seminar for everyone? Because I would find it fascinating. There's so much information out there. Companies are making up their own language for what things are. It's kind of
Hmm.
it's kind
Yeah.
of maddening. And what's necessary, what's not necessary, what's hype, what's actually what should we be paying attention to as bass anglers? And he was like, "Yeah, absolutely, let's do it." And so, Andrew, I just kind of want to kind of give it to you. Take it, take us for a wild ride. We want to go like you said earlier. I want to learn something walking away from this, and like something I never knew. And I have a feeling you're going to bring that.
Yeah, so this is
Hopefully,
one of my it's probably maybe my favorite piece of gear to talk about because I usually tell people if you're gonna spend money on either rod, reel, or line, like of those three things, I think the rod really is like where the majority of your money should go. So that's a question we get all the time. Like, I've got $200 to build a combo. What should I sink money into more than the others? It's like with a reel, there's some nice things about a reel, right? You can pick up line faster on certain ones than other ones, depending on what you're gonna do. If you're frogging, then obviously you want a faster reel. If you're cranking, you want a slower reel, that kind of stuff. But really, at the end of the day, a reel is just there to pick up line. There's not really a lot that reel does to your lure or to your presentation. It still does some, but in terms of like the balance there between rod and reel, rod definitely does a lot more of the heavy lifting when it comes to like your actual techniques and imparting your movement on the lure that you're using and feeling bites and keeping fish hooked and getting fish to the boat. It's really on the rod. And so this is one of those topics that I really like to talk about because I went down this road as an angler over the past probably 5-10 years where you like start and I'm like a ugly stick guy. I'm
yeah,
going to Walmart, I'm buying my whatever they are, the ugly stick elites or the whatever they are now, GLX or whatever they call them at Walmart now. I don't know. I haven't bought an ugly stick in a while, but I used to love ugly sticks. And
right.
that was me. I would go there, I'd buy my $30 rod and that would get me by. And then you start to go down this path where, all right, I'm getting more and more into fishing. All right, I got the bug real bad. Now I'm going to start getting into a little bit higher end combos. Now I'm going to start buying more combos. Now I need a jerkbait rod. I need a crankbait rod. I
Oh
need a
yeah,
frogging rod. I need a flipping rod. And you get to this point where the internet tells you that you need a specified rod for every single technique. Like you need 37 rods because you need a dedicated jerkbait setup, or else you're not going to be able to use that jerkbait just right. You need a dedicated drop shot setup, or else it's going to, it's not going to wiggle under the water like you want it to. So basically, they tell you it's like, all right, you need 37 rods, but that's not practical because I'm guessing the majority of people that are listening to this or, that are watching, especially being a kayak guy, especially yourself, you can't take 37 rods with you every time. You can take like 3 or 4 maybe, or if you have like a black
oh,
pack
I
or
go
something, maybe you
6.
can take
I go
5. Yeah.
6.
Yeah, I usually I have a hard and fast rule that I usually don't take more than 3 rods with me in the kayak. And
Oh,
I like it because also if you start sticking rods up behind me, I know what will happen is in the
oh,
middle of the day,
guaranteed. Yep.
yeah, I'll forget they're there. Bam, hit them in the back cast and one of my rods snaps. And so I try and keep it so that I don't poke any rods up. So I have kind of like 2 that shoot back and then I have one in my hand, obviously. And so, but what happened was I had 37 rods and I could only take 3 of them with me at a time. And so then I was like, okay, well, now the night before I'm stressing out because what 3 rods am I going to take? Now I have to plan my whole day. I don't know what's going to happen while I'm out on the water. I don't know what's going to, present itself in front of me where I'm like, darn it, I wish I had these 2 rods that I don't have with me. And so then instead of having 37 rods, I was like, how do I get to the least number of rods that still cover all of my techniques? And so what I did is a long time ago, I basically made myself 5 combos that I thought could do like 95% of the type of fishing that we're going to do here in Ohio. And so
Yeah.
that's really like my, I guess, quote unquote seminar that I tell people is like, you're going to walk around this expo or you're going to be, the Bassmaster Classics coming up. People are going to be walking around that expo with 1,000 different rods to choose from. The thing that they want you to think is that you need 37 rods. And at the end of the day, you really don't. You really need like 4 or 5. And so what I did is I kind of like broke them down into 5 different kind of like named combos that will go through and really what I think you can handle everything you want. So the first, and this is like one of the ones that is a little bit controversial sometimes, but I really think
Oh,
you only
starting
need
off.
1 spinning rod.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
I think unless you're on like St. Clair or something and you're just ultra light line, ultra finesse drop shot something, you can do almost everything in the world you need with a spinning rod with a 7-foot medium fast. Like you can. It can throw everything. You can throw Neds, you can throw wacky rigs, poppers, blade baits, grubs, inline spinners, drop shots. You can jerk bait with it. You can throw spooks on it. You can throw little paddle tail swim baits. Like everything that you need to do with a spinning rod, you can do with a 7-foot medium. And so that was one of the big things for me is like, why do I have 4 spinning rods that are all basically the same combo? Like, I don't need this many. And so I shrunk that down. I really think you can do that. If you get like a 2,500 size spinning reel and you put it on there, you throw 10-pound braid on it with like, keep a leader with you if you need it. If you really want to tie a leader, that's great. But it's like at the end of the day, everything that I want, and you can have multiple of this if you want, right? If you're going to go out there and you're going to be throwing only finesse, then yeah, maybe you do have two of this spinning combo. But it's not like you need, oh, I need a 6'9" and a 6'11" and a 7'1" and a 7'4". It's like you can do almost everything with just a 7-foot medium. And so that was the first one. Was really
You get
kind of,
pushback on that when you're like when you're talking? Don't never really been to one of these seminars before.
I mean, there's very few techniques where I would say you can't. I don't know if I can think of one that you can't throw if you're going to do spinning gear on a 7-foot medium. Like the only thing I could see is maybe if you're like, again, really drop shot extraordinaire and you really need this medium light or this light rod to load up the way you want it to, then fine, I guess. But the way that I fish in creeks and rivers and lakes, like I can do everything with that rod. And so you might find some people that have some personal preferences. Like I've ran into people before that say, I agree with you that I don't need that many spinning rods, but I'd rather use a medium light than a medium for most of what you just said. And it's like, that's fine. So then that's
Yeah.
what works for you. But you don't need 12 spinning combos unless you just need that many on the deck of your boat and to switch really fast. You don't need them because they, serve 12 different purposes really in your boat. Like I really think a spinning combo is one of those things you can shrink down a lot of your arsenal pretty quick.
All right. Well, solid. Here, let's pause real fast for you jump into the others. I got some questions here. First, Army Outdoors, new member. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. You're awesome. So you'll start getting those perks and stuff this week because I launch videos every single week. All right, we got some things here. Let me see. Some questions. Just kind of reinforcing. Bro, someone just getting the bass fishing. This is all I've heard or read on the internet. Bowfin junkie. Thank you.
What, that you need a bunch of rods?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, Bowfin tells if we're correct, but yeah, you need a specialized rod. I think this came up. You need a specialized rod
Yeah.
for
And this is
every
where the
lure
industry goes. You're
known to
seeing
man.
like Abu Garcia just came out with a whole bunch of signature series from all the pros where everybody that's ever put an Abu Garcia logo on their jersey now has 5 signature rods that they all made. It's like you don't need that many.
It's where it's going. I mean, I
You're
was
okay.
just
Yeah.
on. I had Yak rods on. Um, I like that company. I like the people who are working it, and um, I mean, you go on their website. It's chatterbait rod. It's finesse rod. It's like Ned, and there's like almost like
Yeah.
another one for like wacky rig. I was like, oh my gosh, this is getting expensive real fast. So,
And the
let me
dirty
see.
little secret is a lot of those companies, it's the same dang rod. Like they're
Same
just
blank.
doing it so that they can have multiple SKUs. Like they
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
really take and I'm not saying about that one, but just
sure.
the fishing industry in general, right? They're going to say, "Oh, I found a good blank. I'm going to make this in 7-1, 7, 6-8, and 6-6, and I'm going to call the 7-1 a jig rod. I'm going to call the 6-8 a skipping rod." It's like they're basically the same. It's just a gimmick to make sure that there's multiple rods that you feel like you need to buy.
Yeah, yeah. So
Unfortunately.
you're like Army. He just said, I have 32 rods in my boat, my man. Hey, you
Yeah,
know
that
what?
was me.
Yeah, you know what? I wouldn't mind having 32 rods.
Yeah, I'm
I
not gonna
just
complain, but
I
realistically,
probably will here in a
yeah,
couple like
most of them
5
aren't gonna
years.
get used,
No,
unfortunately. Yeah.
no. Oh my goodness. All right, what else we have here? Bowfin Junkie says, I've gone down an endless rabbit hole of possibilities, and it's very confusing as a new angler. Followed up by, let me see here. Um, I am from Bucktail. I am definitely not new to it and still get twisted up on rod selection. So
Because they
this is
change
hopefully
every week. Like what a company said 2 years ago you needed in a chatterbait rod is now the polar opposite of what that same company says you need now with the chatterbait rod. Like that's the whole game, obviously, is we want to sell you more rods. And so we're not going to tell you that, oh, the one rod you bought 5 years ago is good for 20 years. It's like, oh no, man, you need this year's rod. Like you need this brand new jerkbait rod that we came out that is almost the exact same as the last 12 jerkbait rods we came out with, except this one came out in 2023.
oh yeah, something
So you
has to
need
be
that
new
one.
on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, is there a day where we start seeing expiration dates on the fishing rods?
I mean, you kind of already see it at this point. Like if you go down and you look at iCast or somewhere and you go down and you see all of these, you would like, I don't know, the hype around new things that come out that aren't new, that just have a different label or a different pro's name on them is insane. Like there's a whole money circle pit of just recycling anglers' monies because they're like, oh, I can slap this guy that, finished in 3 top 10s last year. I can slap his name on a rod and he's got 10,000 followers on Instagram and some of them will buy a rod. Sure, let's do it. Why not? Yeah.
That's what I love about you. You can say whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
This is great.
This is
Now
why
I
I
know why
can't work
people
with
love
any
you.
Yeah, I've already burned every bridge with the company.
Every
I can't
bridge is
work with
burned. All I got is my opinion. Here it is. Army Outdoors 88N. The expo is a money pit. Yeah, for this very reason. Oh my goodness. This is it's revealing and kind
In
of
the same front, though, it's fun. Like, this is also what makes fishing a lot of fun to talk about is because, there are 12,000 different rods you can use for a chatterbait and 1,300 different companies you can go take a look at. And we're always chasing that, like, unicorn. We're chasing that perfect setup, that perfect rod. And every year someone dangles something in front of us and says, you thought you had the perfect rod, check this out. Or you thought you had the perfect reel for this. Nope, check this one out. And then they got you right where they want you. And you're like, well, maybe it will, right? Maybe if I have that 0.2 ounces lighter reel, I'll feel that extra bite and I'll catch 20 more fish next year. It's like that kind of stuff it's a dangerous game.
extremely dangerous. But I love it because I got guys like Fishing with Gramps. He does these
Oh yeah.
these real reviews, these
Gramps
rod
is great.
reviews, and I love learning about it. But I also love information is power,
Yeah.
right? And if we go confused into an expo, or we go confused to a website that tells us we need all these things in order to compete or catch fish, we start to believe it. But if we have knowledge that you're about to lay on us here in a bit, we can help separate kind of the nonsense or the fun. Let's just call it fun,
Yeah.
the fun of it all, but still know that we know that we know we don't. It's not needed to succeed in this sport.
Yeah, and the fun part about this is, like, the info that we'll talk about today or you get from anybody is, like, that's just one person's opinion, where I think a lot of times and you saw this more so a couple years ago, I think, than you do now. I think now people are starting to get hip to it, but it used to be, like, guys would watch 1 YouTube channel or 2 YouTube channels or something, and that was it, and they get all their information from those 1 or 2 people, and they could be the best angler in the world, but it doesn't matter. It's just their opinion on 3/4 of this stuff, and it's not the God's honest truth all the time or the end all be all. And so, yeah, watch as many YouTube channels as you can, listen to as many podcasts as you can, different sources of information, read articles. That's something that I wish more people would do nowadays because there's so much really good info out there. If you just want to take the time and even go look at like scholarly articles, like I fell down this rabbit hole a couple years ago where I'll get on these websites that have these scholarly, like fisheries biology type research papers and stuff, and you'll
Mm.
start to read them and just try and gain a little bit of info on there because the more info you have in your tool belt, the more you can decide for yourself what you want to believe and what you don't want to believe and what you want to, take to heart and which ones you want to kind of tune out a little bit.
I saw you take that deep dive. I can tell on your website because you started having these biologists on your Tackle Talk show.
Yeah.
I was like, oh
Yeah.
man, he took a deep dive on that. I was like, that'd be
It's
fascinating
fun. Yeah.
because no one else is covered. Not a lot of people are covering that angle.
Yeah. Because it takes effort to do. Like you can't as bad as this sounds, it's like a lot of people just want to fire up something, turn it on, and talk with their buddies about the fish they caught last Tuesday. And that's a much easier conversation to have than with a fisheries biologist about light penetration and oxygen levels and that kind of stuff. It takes more prep on your front. If I'm going to have the conversation, I actually have to do my research and lay out my conversation a little bit and my points and what I want to hit. And I think sometimes people just unfortunately don't want to put in the work to do that kind of stuff, which
Yeah,
then opens up lanes for people that do enjoy doing that.
for sure, for sure. I got to actually go back. I got to put that one like a star because I actually want to listen to that one.
Yeah, we did. If you haven't listened, we did one like 2 years ago. It was a 4-part series, and it was called The Bait Breakdown. And what I did is I went out and I found 4 different experts in 4 different fields. So I found an expert for bait fish, an expert for crawfish, an expert for aquatic insects, and then an expert for reptiles and amphibians. And basically, I picked their brain for like an hour and a half each on what the biology of the bait is doing because we spend all these hours out there imitating a crawl or imitating shad or imitating bluegill, but we spend all this time researching the behavior of the predator, of the bass, and not necessarily of the forage that we're trying to imitate. And so it would, do you really well to say, no, when does a crawl move like that? Or when does a crawl look like that? Where would a crawl be this time of the year? When do they move? What does lunar phases do to these things? All that kind of stuff, because that's what you're trying to imitate. And so we did that a couple years ago, and that was maybe one of my favorite multi-part series, especially that we did, because
Yeah,
again, it's just an angle that unfortunately we overlook a lot of times.
for sure. And that one's actually on your website right now, right? If you go
Yeah.
to, was it tackletalkpodcast.com?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep.
It's one of the 4-part series. You kind of see in blocks a little bit down the page. So if you're interested in taking a deep dive on that, head over there after the show and yeah, get schooled. All right, I'm gonna pause and give the show back to you because you only went through one of
Oh
five,
yeah.
right? All right, let's
Yeah.
go.
So, combo number 2, I would say, and this is the one where if you have like a casting rod already, and then the next question obviously everybody has is, okay, well, if I do need one different rod for something, what's that rod? Because I have like a 7-foot medium casting rod. What's the next one I need? You need a crankbait rod. Like a crankbait rod is probably the most different rod that you're going to have in these 5 compared to everything else. And so a crankbait rod, obviously you're going to want to make sure that it's a cranking specific rod, because when you go to the store and you buy a crankbait rod, as long as it's a crankbait rod, a medium heavy crankbait rod and then a medium heavy fast rod is going to feel light and night and day different. The cranking rod is going to feel like a wet pool noodle, and the fast rod is going to feel a little bit more, not broomsticky, but you know what I mean. Like it's going to be a lot stiffer, and so you're going to have a lot more wobble in that crankbait rod, which obviously you want, because this is where, especially when I was new, I got really confused about all these people talking about moderate bends and parabolic bends and all that kind of stuff. Basically, all they're trying to say is with a cranking rod, you want that sucker to, like, when it loads up and you set the hook on a fish, or when you put any sort of tension on it, you want more of an arc in it, and you want the bend to be farther down the rod than you do all the way up top. So when people talk about like a fast rod, the bend in that rod, it's not necessarily how much it bends, it's where it bends. And so a fast rod bends more closer to the tip, which is nice because you can set the hook faster. It loads up faster, which means you get the tension on that hook faster and you can penetrate. So for a Ned rig or something, for instance, that's what you want. But then if you're going to use like treble hooks are the one thing where it's a delicate process, because you want to hook that fish, you want to keep it pinned, but you also don't want to rip them out of the fish's mouth. And so you want a lot of play in your rod and sometimes line. You can get into that conversation here in a second that we will too. But, especially your rod, you want a much more forgiving rod. And so get you like a 7 to 7.3 medium heavy crankbait specific rod. So even if you're on a budget, you can go to a Bass Pro, you can get like their cranking sticks that I think are probably 70 something bucks or 80 something bucks, something like that. Furies in the Dobbins line makes a really good crankbait rod. There's a lot out there in that kind of like $100-ish range that you can find that's pretty good. But then the big thing on that is obviously with that more moderate, that more bendy rod, you're going to want a slower reel. And the one thing the only way I've really thought to explain this, and when people are like, why do I need a slower reel to crankbait? Why can't I just reel my current reel slower? It's like,
Sure.
well, you can, but if you want to think like riding a bike, like if you're going to ride a bike uphill, what do? You lower the
You're
gear.
down. Right.
Yeah, you go down a gear, because what happens is you do have to pedal more, but it's way easier to pedal versus if you kept it in 7th gear, you would have to pedal less, but it's so hard to move those gears and you're just going to wear yourself out. It's the exact same thing with throwing a crankbait, because there's so much water displacement and so much tension on that, and so much that thing's just digging 15, 16, 20 feet down if you're throwing deep divers. Like you really have to have much more of a slower reel so that you can actually go through, you can make your full winds. You're not going to tire out your arm or your hand or really overwork your reel. And so slower reel, obviously for crankbaits, is definitely the go-to. And it's something that you're seeing a lot of reels move away from now. So it used to be like 5-to-1s were fairly normal. You could find 5-to-1 reels all over the place. And now they're like a dying breed, and everybody wants 8-to-1s and 9-to-1s and 10-to-1s and
Oh yeah.
going bonkers. It's like a slow reel is definitely the move for your crankbaits. And so get you a 5-to-1, 6-to-1, and then line, you're going to have some people that are going to say mono, and that's okay. The reason for mono, obviously, is it's got a little bit more stretch in it. So again, if you have crankbaits, that's great. It's a little bit more forgiving. I'm going to go with fluoro, because the bigger thing for me is if I have like a DT 16 and I want that, Rapala to get down to 16 feet, fluorocarbon is going to help you do that, because fluorocarbon sinks, obviously. It's going to help you get down to like the desired running depth of that crankbait, which is the name of the game with crankbaits, is you want that thing to be banging off the bottom. You don't want it to be going through the middle of the water column, just doing this. You want it to be off of wood, off of rock, going all over the place. And that's where you're getting your strikes. And so that's your second combo there is really just your cranking specific combo. You can throw medium divers, deep divers, almost any crankbait. You can throw square bills on that rod if you really want to, and then kind of like sneaky uses for that, depending on what crankbait rod you get. A lot of people now are moving to more of a moderate rod for spinner baits and for chatterbaits.
Okay.
So for me, I throw my chatterbait actually on the same rod that I throw my deep cranks on. It's like a 7 3, like I think it's technically a heavy, but it's a Dobbin, so it's really more like a medium heavy. But it's a glass rod, and I love it. And it's one of those things where I'd thrown chatterbaits on fast rods my whole life, and I missed a decent amount of chatterbait fish. And what I've really found through, I can't remember who we're maybe Wheeler on our
Okay.
show, someone we were talking to, and he was like, well, probably why, right? Is because you were reacting too fast, and that fast rod was really popping that chatterbait right out of the fish's mouth with the blade right there. Where with a slower rod, it obviously slows you down. So when you go to set the hook, you've got a little bit more forgiveness in there, where it will slow down your hook set, and you let that fish get that whole hook in its mouth and then penetrate. And so I don't know. I really like how it goes. I like the way that that rod loads up on a chatterbait, especially in the kayak. It's been awesome. And so you'll see people use that rod for that too. It just depends on which one you get.
Yeah.
Um,
So that
the
was
next,
3. There were 3, right?
that's two. Yeah,
That's 2
two.
because you put 2 and 1.
Yeah.
Um, Real
S-
quick, you mentioned your kayak.
Yeah.
This is kayak fishing obsessed, so you gotta share what do you got? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
if I had to guess, and I actually don't know,
Okay.
living in
What do
Indiana,
you, yeah, what do you think I run?
it's got you gotta have an Old Town.
I do.
I know you do. I know you do because you're kinda, like, connected with Grams and Old
Oh
Town, the
no.
area. It's like Old
Oh
Town's
no.
taking over.
I'm just an Old Town guy. Yeah, I bought an Old Town. So like this is the fun part about the show too, is I don't work with Old Town. I don't work with, Hobie or anybody like that, right? I did my research. So I went from an Ascend A10 to an Ascend 10T to a Feel Free Lure 10, and then to a Old Town 106 PDL.
Okay.
And when I went to make the switch from the Feel Free to the Old Town, I did a ton of research. And I basically, like everybody, you start with the vibes, you start with the Jacksons, the Hobies, the Old Towns, you start to, whittle yourself down. And what I really got to was, unfortunately, was Hobie and Old Town was like your two big ones at the top. And so I was
Yeah.
like, I'm planning on this at least for now for being my forever kayak, or at least as long as it'll last me. And so I wanted, my investment to mean something. I wanted to get a really good, but I also wanted a pedal drive. And what I didn't like about the Hobies was I didn't like the Mirage drive.
Right.
So I was like, okay, so I'm going to go with a bicycle style, PDL. And I love it. Like I fish a lot of shallow water. And so the big thing that scared me on the Hobie was even if I do have the Mirage drive up, and so it, makes the fins even, I bottom out a lot. I'm still going to rip those things up. I'm going to break them. It's not
Mm.
going to be a good time. I'm going to have to pull that out a lot. And if I have to pull it out, it's way easier in an Old Town than it is in a Hobie to pull out the Mirage drive and put it back in versus the Old Town. It's on a hinge, you pull it right up, boom, right back down, and it's great. So yeah, I love it.
All right. I was actually just looking on a website earlier today at one of those.
What do you run?
Gramps. I have 2. I have a Native Slayer Propel 10. That was kind of my entry level one. Had that for years. Loved
Okay.
it. I think the 10-foot size is perfect for the 500 to 2,000 acre. What
Yeah.
most of the time is around us.
Yep.
If I had a
I agree.
larger lake, I would need a 12-foot with a motor. I'd just get a motor at that point.
Yeah.
So I recently picked up for a steal online. I get all my kayaks on Facebook Marketplace, like
Yep.
in December when everybody wants to get them out of
Yep.
their garage because they're taking up space. And I
Best way to
drive
do
like
it.
halfway across the country to get them.
Yep.
They are
It's smart.
never in
Yeah.
Canton, Ohio. I went to
No.
Fort Wayne for this last one. I got a bona fide P127. I love pedal drives.
Okay.
I love the exercise, and I don't even I never carry an anchor with me because I'm just constantly moving
Yeah.
most of the time. I just reposition myself. The thing is about the bona fide is that it sucks at turning. It just sucks. I mean, granted, it's an extra 2 feet, right, that I have to
Yeah.
move. The wind, it's going from a 10 to 12. It's like a bigger sail, right? You can push it
Yeah.
around. It's hard to turn. Now I'm doing like 3-point turns, and so I'm not loving it for that reason. I think I might need to come up with a mod for the steering to maybe get some more surface area going over the rudder.
Yeah.
But I like it, and I'll use it probably for an entire season, but I will probably go back to a 10 to 11 foot footer
Yeah.
next year, and I was looking at the one you got.
Yeah, I mean, for the bang for your buck for whatever it is, like 2 grand, and you've got, I mean, the whole thing. I also just like 2 days ago finished up rigging it up, so I've got live scope this year for the first time.
Oh,
I'm gonna
come on,
play around with it.
come on.
I will. I'm gonna shoot it straight. I'm gonna shoot everybody like it is. Like I want to just put this through the ringer and see if it makes that. And I fish rivers a lot. So like I don't think it's gonna play a lot in the rivers. I really don't. I honestly, to be truth be told, I think I'll probably put it in perspective mode more than I put it in forward facing mode. But
Okay.
we'll see. But yeah, I've got some new toys to play with. But that Old Town, I mean, you can mod that thing however you want. It's great. It's got the little, anchor mount in the back, so you can throw a motor on it if you want. You could throw
Yep.
a Torpedo or a Bixby or a Newport or whatever you want on the back. Like it's pretty solid. If you don't want to go all the way up to like a $4,000 Hobie, it's really your next best thing.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Hey, we got like I'm starring a ton of crap over here. Let me go over here and see if I
Yeah.
can pick up some of these comments.
This is interesting
Um,
because I never get to like have interact with people. Like I'm always just by myself in my bedroom with a microphone. So this is cool. Like you can actually talk to people.
well, if you see one that you want to address, let me know. I got to go through because I've been like, boom, here we're going back to the conversation about um rods. Jeff Hongersmeyer,
Pocket
the one who owns
fisherman.
US River Mess.com. Pocket fishermen. Where is that?
You like sneak it in your golf bag. You go to like a golf course and just go fish the pond. Yeah.
That would be me. That would be the only reason I go on the golf course.
Yeah.
I've snuck on a few golf courses, kind of with permission, kind of with not, nonetheless. What we got here? Digs. I still use a Zebco 202 now with a bait
Heck
caster
yeah.
on it that I got when I was 6 years old. Still making
Goes
it happen
tanks.
there. Scott. I've been catching fish on the same rod from college days in the late '80s. Man, it just goes to
It's a
say. I mean,
testament to whatever rod company that is too.
yeah.
You should send them a
Scott, who was
photo and
that?
see if they'll use you for an ad.
I just got off the phone with Scott this past week. I don't think I know which one he was. Um, moving on to our conversation about biologists, Jeff said, "My son-in-law is a marine biologist. He can talk your ear off about fish thoughts, but he's wicked on catching them. So that'd be kind of fun to just geek out with someone. I can
Yeah.
see why that would be so much fun to talk to him. And Bucktail, what did he say? Team Marketplace, where I got all of mine. Love Marketplace. Not right
Yep. It
now.
used to be Craigslist back in the day where because you had to put in the work and you had to look yourself through these terrible classified ads and everybody was sketchy. You couldn't see anybody's pictures or anything. So you really took a chance of like, you know, going to some sketchy people's houses or something. That's where you got great deals.
Oh yeah, where you're willing to risk your life to get
Yep.
the deal. Yeah, that's
Worth
that's
it.
that's where they're at. Wait, look what I see here. Army outdoors. I feel so unbalanced in a kayak, but I want to learn. This is the same guy earlier. He's on a bass boat. So
Yeah.
he's coming over to the dark side is what I recognize here. So Army, I like it. I like it.
Yeah, you get your whatever, your sea legs under you eventually. Like the first kayak that I ever had that I could stand in was that Ascend 10T, like the Bass Pro brand that they run in the stores. Like it was probably a $500 kayak. And it's one of those ones that's like I had to actually balance in that kayak. Like it's not like my
Oh,
ones I have now where you can almost do jumping jacks in it. Like
like
this
try to
was
tip it.
you had to,
Yeah.
and I'm a little dude. I'm like 5'9". I can't imagine being like 6'3" or something and trying to stand in this thing.
I remember my first time out. Oh my gosh, you get me going. I got into Native Slayer and I just fished for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours. And I can't tell you how incredibly sore I was. I was using muscles that I never
Yeah.
used before just to kind of get used to the new casting because you're limited, right? Unless you're
Oh, yeah.
standing, which I can stand in mine, no problem. I get the balance to do it. But I just remember getting up the next morning. I was like, is this for me? And after a few times, I figured it out and you fall in love with it, but it wasn't
Yeah.
like after the first time fell in love with it. There's some things I fell in love, the access, kind of go wherever I want, but man, I was sore. So if you've never been in one yet and you're going to just know it's a different way of fishing,
Yeah.
give it a few times. Just give it a few
Yeah,
times.
but it's worth it when you can get to the spots that the bass boat dude can't get to.
It is true.
Yeah.
There's a spot that I could barely get to, and I'm in a
Yeah.
kayak,
Those are the
but
best
it
ones. Yeah.
holds it, it holds them all.
Yeah. In a day and age where there are very few unpressured fish anymore and very few like fished spots, everybody knows everywhere, everybody gets to everywhere. It's like a kayak is really one of your last chances to get to like some of your little last frontier-ish type spots in your area.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there's a spot that I go, and my dad's getting into kayak fishing. He's doing the Knucklehead Bass Fishing Series challenge with me, and there's a spot I get to. I'm not even sure he can get to it. It's weird. It's not like, oh, I'm just kind of paddling back this little creek. Like I have to like lay everything back and to get under this one thing to
Yeah.
get to my spot. And I'm just not sure he's gonna be able to do it. But anyways, all right. I'm gonna pass it back to you. We're rod two into
I'll
into
pump through
five.
this real
We got
fast.
10 minutes left.
So combo number 3, real easy one. This is gonna be your like 7-foot medium fast rod. So this can be, if you want to call this your jerkbait rod, great. If you want to call it your top water rod, great. But this is the rod where like when you have it in your hand, you're palming your reel and you're working it down, like you're
Mm,
twitching something, or you're actually, you're walking a spook, you're twitching a jerkbait. This is where you're actually imparting a lot of motion on this little lure, and usually they're trebled lures, obviously. But this is like 7-foot medium fast. Get like a 6-to-1 or a 7-to-1 casting reel. This is the one rod that I'll keep monofilament on, because if I'm going to throw a spook on it, obviously I like mono. And then for jerkbaits too, depending on what jerkbait you're throwing, the thing about a jerkbait is you can always make a jerkbait sink, but you can't always make a jerkbait float. And so
mm,
if you've got a jerkbait and you've got mono on it, and for some reason that jerkbait wants to rise up a little bit because you have mono, you can always add like suspend strips or wrap something around the trebles, or that kind of stuff. And you can always add weight to kind of balance it out. And so I like that. Again, you're going to throw a lot of trebled baits on this, and so the extra stretch of mono is great. So if you're going to have mono on one of your rods, this is the one that I do it. This is my top water, poppers, spooks, prop baits. I get questioned all the time, like, what do I throw a whopper plopper on? It's like,
mm.
this is the rod that most of the time I would throw a whopper plopper on. Square bills and jerk baits, all that kind of stuff you can throw on this rod. The next one would be just your all around. I call this like my workhorse setup. Basically, this is like the one that everybody starts out with, like a 7-foot to 7.3 medium heavy fast rod. This is like your do everything rod. And so if you were only going to buy one casting rod, this will do like almost everything that within reason would want it to do. Get you like a 7-to-1 or 8-to-1 casting reel. I put pretty heavy fluoro on this, so I'll go anywhere from 16 to 20. I just like the little overkill of knowing that when I set the hook on a jig fish, or I set the hook on a Texas rig or something, the last thing I have to worry about is knot strength or line strength. I'd rather just be able to, we call it giving them the beans. I like to give the fish the beans a little bit, right? And make sure that I can lay into it and not worry about my line. And
Right.
so I'll go a little bit higher on this. If you told me, like, Andrew, you can throw 20-pound fluoro and you're going to get 40 bites today, or you can throw, 12-pound fluoro and you can get 50 bites today, I'll still go with the 20-pound fluoro, because I know that those 40 bites that I get, I'm going to be able to, lay the meat down and get those fish
Mm,
in and set the hook like I want to. And so that's just kind of my philosophy on it. But some fairly heavy fluoro is what I'll go with. This can do Texas rigs, flipping jigs, football jigs, chatterbaits. If you don't want to use your, cranking rod, obviously for chatterbaits, this is the one that most people will use. Spinner baits. You can honestly do like almost everything. Buzz baits with this rod, the sky's kind of the limit. And then your fifth rod, and a rod that you do kind of need a specialized rod for, is your, like a meat stick rod. So like your frogging and flipping rod is going to be a lot heavier than most of the things we've already talked about. So this is like 7.3 heavy, fast. You can even go mag heavy depending on what brands you're using, but just like an absolute broomstick of a rod, because this is the rod where when you're throwing a frog in slop, or you're punching through real heavy stuff, you want to make sure that when you set the hook and you have leverage on that fish, you never let the leverage go. And so just as beefy of a rod as you can use, I'll throw 65-pound braid on this thing and just a big fast reel. So this is the one reel. Again, if you're going to go 8-to-1 or whatever, this is the reel to do it, because again, the name of the game on all of these is picking up line. And so when you set the hook on a frog, or you set the hook flipping, picking up line and getting that slack out of your line is the difference between landing the fish and not landing the fish. And so
yeah.
this is your meat stick. You can frog, punch, flip, anything with like heavy vegetation or cover. And then your other two like sneaky options, you can throw a buzzbait on this rod if you want to. And then you can also, in a pinch, right? A lot of people are throwing Alabama rigs now, and that's like a
Yeah.
big thing around here. You can throw Alabama rigs on this rod if you really wanted to. So
All right.
those are kind of like, if you had to pare down your combos to 5 of them, you have one spinning setup, you have a cranking rod, a top water, or a jerkbait rod, so like your little shorter, smaller rod. You'll have a workhorse setup that you can do almost everything, and then you'll have your like frogging meat stick rod. And really, at the end of the day, like you have those 5 rods, you can throw almost everything in your tackle box.
Yeah. So I like it. Thank you so much for explaining all of that. I'll have to go back and listen to this a few times. Just curious to start picking apart a lot of things you said. So let's transition from that a little bit. Still talk about rods and talk about reels. Now, price points on these things.
Yeah.
So help talk to us a little bit about what's hype, what's 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 not. Where should the normal weekend warrior like you and me? I love that you said like you felt a niche there because that's what I
Yeah.
feel like my kayak fishing channel is. Wendell Fishing. It's kind of kayak fishing for the weekend warrior.
Yeah.
It's just basically everyone's learning as I learn. So for the weekend warrior, not I'm a professional on the circuit. Um, what's hype? What's not?
Yeah. It's so my big philosophy on this is I'm not going to sit here and tell somebody that, not to buy a $500 rod because I would also be a hypocrite because for the first time this year I did buy a $500 rod. So but I like that. I like the act of going from a $30 rod to a $500 rod. The one thing I will usually try and tell people is you don't make that jump. You don't
No.
go from an ugly stick to an NRX, G Loomis $650 rod because you're not going to appreciate everything that $650 rod has to offer because you just went from entry level to, the Lamborghini of rods. And so what you have to do is you have to go from the beat up 1998 Corolla to the, 2005 Honda Civic to the, 2010 Accord to the 2000. Like you have to gradually go up because it's same thing with cars and everything else where you're not going to appreciate all the little nuances in that rod that make it worth 500-600 bucks. And so I'm one of those people who's like, I'm not going to tell you that you have to stay in a certain price range because everybody's a little different. But the one thing that I will tell you is go up gradually until you get to the point where you feel like this is where I want to be and this is where I'm kind of topped out. And for some people, that might be $100. For some people, that might be $250. For some people, it's $50, and that's totally fine. But that's the fun part about fishing is, we talked about it earlier, kind of coming full circle. There are 10,000 different rods to choose from, which means that whatever price point you're in, there's a darn good rod in that price point that you can,
Mm,
buy and will do everything that you want it to do. So while we kind of, I don't know, make fun of a little bit the amount of choices and the amount of, reinventing of the wheel and everything that's out there, the number of choices that are out there at the end of the day for a consumer are a good thing because you just
yeah.
have more parity out there. You have more options to go out and find the one that you want. Um, with that being said, like a lot of folks, when you want to take that first jump up into a, quote unquote nicer rod from your stuff you're going to buy at Walmart or whatever, the one rod that I usually shoot people toward is a Dobbins Fury because it's 120, 129 bucks for a rod that just is, I think for the price point, like you can't beat it. It's hands down for $120 you're getting so much more than $120 out of that rod, and it's why I still to this day I have Furies. I've got 2 of them right beside me that I still fish to this day. My frogs rod that I actually used for probably 5 years now is a
Yeah.
Dobbins Fury that I have just, I mean, abused. I have beat the living crap out of this rod. I have not taken care of it, and it's still just walloping fish to this day as my most abused rod at 120 bucks. um so that's a great rod to start out with, but now that you're seeing a lot more competition in that area, so like the Shimano SLX
Mm,
for 99 bucks or whatever it is a steal of a deal for a rod. You're starting to see some of the like old guard of rods, I think, fall a little bit out. So like 4 or 5 years ago, if you'd have asked me kind of in like the entry to mid-level price range, I probably would have said like a St. Croix Mojo Bass would be like
yeah.
kind of one of the standard rods in that category. And you're starting to see, and now a lot of companies come up and be like, no, I can do better than that, right? Like I can reduce weight, I can get rid of like all of the gloss on that rod and just the heavy feeling of that rod. And you're seeing people like Arc come out here and really kind of shake things up a little bit and put some rods in people's hands that feel really good that you wouldn't have expected from Arc. Um, there are some Abu Garcia rods. I'm not a big Abu Garcia guy, but
Yeah.
there's some Abu rods that feel really nice. And obviously, you're going to get into some different price points there with the new, oh shoot, I'm going to forget the name, the black rod they came out with like 3 or 4 years ago that not 3 or 4 years ago, sorry, last year, that's just like super, super light. But anyway, there's some there. You're gonna see a lot of stuff out there to take a look at. The best thing that you can do is to go to like an expo or go to a big store of some sort and just put your hands on as many rods as you can. And the one thing I always tell people too is if you're looking for like a chatterbait rod, bring the reel that you're going to throw that chatterbait
Mm,
on with you when you go look for rods, because put it in your hand, feel how that rod and feels in your hand. We talk about balance a lot. The balance
yeah.
of the rod is really where that natural balance point is, and the reel on different rods will make that balance point change. And so if you've got a Daiwa Tatula and I've got a Shimano Corrado and we put it on the same rod, the balance point's going to be different because the weight of that reel is different. And so,
Mm,
as weird as it sounds, I'm the guy that walks into a Cabela's or somewhere with 2 reels in my hands and wants to go put them on rods and feel them myself. So I
makes
think that
sense to
helps a
me.
lot of people too.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I like it. All right, guys. I can't. We're almost to an hour. How crazy is that? Um, Absolutely. This blows my mind. This is one of those. I say it every time, but here we are, and I'm like, I can't believe where did that hour go? All
It goes
right, so
fast.
yeah, it does. So now that we're coming up to the end of the time, I like to kind of do last call for questions. So if you got a call, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, if you got a question for Andrew, go ahead and throw that up there. Let me see. I had one in here from Bowfin Junkie. This is what he says. I've heard conflicting info in a frogging rod. Some videos I watch say you want a moderate fast action, and some say just fast. Any thoughts on that?
1000% fast.
Mm,
Like you want that frog. So like you're out there, you're fishing it in slop, that frog gets engulfed or whatever, and it's out there in the weeds. The one thing you want is you want fast hook penetration. And so the faster the rod is, the quicker it loads up, the quicker the tension hits the hooks, and the quicker that it will get pierced through obviously that fish's mouth. Now, the only reason that I could even think that someone might say a moderate rod is because I guess if you have a problem with setting the hook too fast, like how you're supposed to, you let the frog get eaten, maybe count to 3 literally in your head or out loud before you set the hook, as weird as it feels. You get blown up on, you go 1, 2, 3, and then just boom. Give it plenty of time to get that frog in its mouth. So I guess that might be the reason for going for a moderate rod, is to slow you down. But no, you want a fast rod for sure.
okay, right on. All right, so here's a question for you. So we talked a lot about, well, actually, what's I want to talk a little bit about your. I had this question. I was kind of interested in what your thoughts were. How many episodes do you have? How many episodes do you have for your tackle talk?
I think we're at like almost 180, something like that.
Okay, top
There's a lot of.
3 favorite interviews. I'm sure you get this question a lot. I'm just curious, and
Mm,
why? I know it's
mm.
tough because I know you probably love all of them, but top like they're interesting. This is just
It's hard.
you
Yeah.
learned something that you're like, oh man, that was memorable for you. Not that it was like better than anybody else. It was just memorable for you.
Um, okay, Bill Dance is hard to beat. Bill
That was
Dance was like
recent.
I was like, maybe a year ago, something like
Okay.
that, yeah. We had Jimmy Houston, a couple weeks ago too.
Okay.
Um, so some of those, like, those type of guys are fun just because that was my childhood, like, growing up and watching those guys on TV and then getting the chance to pick their brain and ask, about topics and things that maybe you don't hear them talk about all the time. It's not the same questions over and over again, and really kinda picking their brain, so I like those. You also touched on it earlier, but I love just what I call my nerdy episodes that
Mm,
are, more on the biology side. So the crawfish episode of the bait breakdown was with Zach Loafman, who is like the North American crawfish guy. Like he's discovered like 8 species of crawfish and has seen everything. Like he's the
wow.
craw guy. And so getting the chance to pick his brain, and really the info that's in that interview is just like, will flip your whole world upside down on what you think about crawfish. And then obviously that gets your mind going of like, whoa, I probably need to rethink some of the things that I do if I really want this to be as like biologically accurate as possible when I'm out there trying to imitate a cross. So I really
Right.
like that one. Um,
Where do you
and then
find these
some.
people, by the way?
I'm a
Where do you
creep.
find the
I'll like
crawl guy?
yeah, dude, I'm the guy that looks through like research papers. I promise. Like I'm the guy at 10 p.m. that is on my phone scrolling through some, scholarly research article about mouth deformities on largemouth bass, and then I'll look and see who's cited on it. I'll try and find them on Facebook or their email address or something, and I'll try and reach out to them, and then it leads to some pretty interesting conversations where it's like, "Hi, my name is Andrew. I am in Dayton, Ohio. I know you have no idea who I am, and this is probably the most out of left field email you'll ever get. But do you want to come on a bass fishing show?" And they're like,
Yeah.
"Sure, yeah,
Yeah, something they don't get asked every day. It's not like they're Bill
yeah,
Dance getting asked to be on a bass fishing show every other week.
Yeah.
Love
And
it.
then maybe my other one that was a fun one just because of the history of everything. We had Ned Katy on, obviously
Oh
Ned
yeah, yeah,
Rig,
yeah.
Ned Katy, and hearing him talk about a lot of things that I thought I knew that I didn't know. So like the history of the Ned Rig, the history of Midwest finesse in general, of the way that he fishes, and those guys out there that invented a Ned Rig fish a Ned is not how we fish a Ned. And so taking in some of that and like, oh, we've been doing this wrong for a long time, and there's some things that maybe you can take away from that one. So there's been some fun ones over the years for sure.
I'm like losing hours as you talk. Not
Sorry.
losing. I'm
You're gonna have to go listen.
I gotta go listen to these things. The great thing is for my work, I gotta travel a lot. So I basically just warehouse all these things until I get in the
Nice.
car for 6 hours and
Yep.
go to town on it. All right, last call for questions here. Um, so one last question I have for you in case someone else does. Tell us where Tackle Talk is going in 2023. You got big plans for it?
You know, I every year I have some ideas that I would like to do, obviously, but at the end of the day, like I just want, and I as corny as this is going to sound, right? I pretty much have a promise to my listeners that when you fire up your phone or whatever on Tuesday morning, there will be an episode waiting for you. I don't like everything in the world that goes on in my life and everything. I want to make sure that no matter what, on Tuesday morning when you wake up, there is a Tackle Talk. So if that means I have to plan way ahead of time or stay up till most of these Monday nights, I'm up till like 2, 3, 4 in the morning, sometimes like editing and getting the show out there because I know I have a deadline like the next day. There's people that are counting on that show to be up, and so I will continue to do that. And then I also have a promise that when you fire that up, that it's not just going to be, oh, I mailed this one in and I'm going to record an episode because it's Tuesday and I have to get an episode out. Like there will be a purpose to it. And
Mm,
so whether it is gear, whether it is a topic that we want to talk about or a technique or a guest or something, I want to make sure that it's not just fluff. It's not just, oh, wow, he really just like waited till last second and mailed this one in. It's like, no, I want to make sure that if you're going to give me 30 minutes of your time, it's worth it.
yeah, solid. I
So
love it.
other than that, I just want to be consistent. I want to keep it going, and you know, like I said, I like to stay in my lane and try and do things the best that I can. And there's way better people out there for YouTube and for fishing videos and content and that kind of stuff. Like you know, um, I don't know. I like where I'm at, and I like being able to do what I like to do and what I think I'm fairly good at doing, and not really like trying to branch out too much and then I don't know, the thing that I love suffers, which is the podcast.
Right. No, makes sense. All right. I'm gonna have this question came in and we'll kind of end on this one.
Yeah,
Slower, lower
got all night.
fishing. And this is one of the things that like you can answer because you have no ties to any company. And maybe you don't want to answer. And maybe your answer is more like general, but what is the one rod you would stay away from?
Ooh. Um,
This might, I mean, obviously all your these are just
hmm.
personal preferences type of thing. Maybe not.
There's yeah, okay. So the one thing I'm gonna say, and most people are probably gonna know who, or at least a couple of the companies I'm talking about here, but the Facebook targeted ad, fake buy one, get one free, those type of companies just they grind my gears because there's people out there that again will do anything as anglers. Like you will buy anything at the drop of a hat if you think it will mean you catch more fish next weekend when you go out to fish. Like
Mhm.
we're like people are with like birthdays and weddings and that kind of stuff where they just say like money goes out the window and people will spend to make sure that it's done the right way. We're the same way with fishing, and so I think sometimes those companies, and yep, there they go in the
Yeah, here
comments of
they
the
come. Here
people
they
will see
come.
them. It's like those companies prey on that a little bit. And if you go to, I'll say it, if you go to Six Skills website, you will see that the same, ad that you saw that was buy one, get one free for a limited time on Facebook, those rods are buy one, get one free 365 days a year. And so they're not buy one, get one free. That's just the price for two of them.
Right.
And so that kind of stuff. Like, and they're not the only ones. There's a bunch out there that will do this, that it's just very like it's like the clickbait equivalent of sales,
Yeah.
which is kind of annoying sometimes, where I think don't go out on just an absolute, drop of a dime, buy a rod, right? Do your research and find a rod that makes the most sense. Read reviews, go through all that kind of, and if it is a 6 gill, great. If that's a rod that you love, I've talked to people, trust me, I've had this conversation before and my inbox gets blown up with people that I've used 6 gill for 6 years. They're great people and I love them. That's awesome, right? I'm not here to say that they're not great rods and they won't catch fish. Just
Yeah.
the marketing tactics of some of these companies irk me a little bit sometimes, and I just wish that more people wouldn't fall prey to it because they see a Facebook ad and they impulse buy.
Yeah, think they're
So
getting a deal because they're presenting
yeah,
it as a deal. Yeah, that makes
right.
sense. Makes sense. All right. Well, folks, we are over the hour here, and I want to be sensitive to your time and just thank you guys so much. Andrew, thank you so much for kind of bringing a angle we've never had on the show before. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Love that. Hey, if you're ever in Canton, let me know. Which actually, this
If
might
you're ever in
actually,
Dayton,
I
come over
know.
this way.
I will actually be in Dayton because I travel through kind of that area. Not really. No one ever travels through Dayton because either go 80, 90, or you're going you're in
Right.
the middle
Yeah.
of nowhere. You're literally in the middle of nowhere. But I am over in that area, and we've got to fish together
Oh yeah.
because
Give me a shout
you're
if you're over
neighbor.
here for sure.
Me, you, and Gramps will get together
Oh yeah.
and we'll go fishing. So, guys, thanks once again to sponsor usrivermaps.com. And also, if you are not signed up for the Knucklehead Bass Fishing Series, where Team Wendell is going to destroy Fishing with Gramps, then please go ahead and do that over. Check it out on Fishing Chaos. My tournament months start in May and they go May, June, July, and August. And as you know, or we haven't know, I got a video on this. I'm not going to take a deep dive here, but you can win a chance to be on my team or Team Grants or Team Hoover or Team Fluke Master or Team Creek Fishing Adventures. And we're going to go down on Veterans Day weekend and do a tournament for the Hero Cup. So if that's something you're interested in kind of being a part of, I have a video on my website, and of course the links in the description will show you how to do that. But enough with that. Andrew, you're the man. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, I look forward to tuning in. What days does your podcast come out? Every
Tackle Talk
Tuesday?
Tuesday. Every Tuesday. Yep.
Tackle Talk
Yep.
Tuesday. All right. Well, you just gained yourself another listener. So
Aw,
thank you
I
so
appreciate
much.
it, man. Thank you.